So I'm going to go on to the countries that were influenced by the Reformation and influenced Taiwan.
那我要再来介绍另外一个国家是被宗教改革很大的影响，然后也很大的这个国家也很大的影响台湾。
First is Scottish Reformation.
这个是苏格兰的宗教改革。
And this man John Knox was chased out of his country and went to Geneva, where John Calvin was.
那这个人约翰诺克斯，他那时候就是被驱逐出境，然后就到了日内瓦，就是约翰加尔文教书的地方。
And he studied under John Calvin.
那他就是在约翰加尔文的手下研究读书。
Then he came back to Scotland.
然后他又回到苏格兰。
This is a picture of him preaching to the Scottish Queen.
这张照片就是约翰诺克斯在苏格兰女皇面前讲道。
And he was fearless.
他是无所畏惧的。
And the queen was actually afraid of him, so she didn't kill him.
那女王也很怕他，所以女王没有把他杀掉。
But he caused a completely change in Scottish society.
但是
he caused a change in Scottish
那
society.
他导致了整个苏格兰的转变。
And eventually Scotland became a reformed country, not a Roman Catholic country.
那最后苏格兰他们就整个国家的教会都变成是基督教，而不是再被罗马天主教给掌控。
He introduced public education to Scotland, and Scotland became the most literate country in Europe.
那苏格兰约翰诺克斯他就把就是教育普及化，还有公立学校制度引进苏格兰，所以苏格兰成为当时识字率最高的国家。
And the primary reason was to cause every single person to be able to read the Bible.
所以其中的原因就是让每一个人都有能力或读懂圣经。
But it also just influenced the whole society, and they became very educated.
那它也影响整个社会，因为每个人都受到很好的教育。
So also a lot of writers like Adam Smith, who wrote The Wealth of Nations, was influenced because of John Knox.
所以像很多的作家，包括像
Joseph Smith.
像约瑟史密斯他写的
Adam Smith, sorry.
亚当史密斯他写的《国富论》，他就是受到苏格兰的影响。
And they've caused the foundation of the democracy.
那他也促成了民主的根基。
This guy.
这个人
he was a pastor.
他是一个牧师。
But he also wrote a book about the relationship between people and the king or their government.
但他写了一本书，是关于人民跟政府或者人民跟君王的关系。
And this statement was saying the king is not by himself; he must also be under the law.
他也讲了一句话说，就是国王的权力 not only or not.
He doesn't have his authority himself; he has to be under the law.
那他讲了一句话，就是君王自己本身是没有权利的，君王他必须要降服在法律之下。
And if the king is abusing the people can throw off the king.
如果君王他们恶待百姓，那百姓有权利来反叛。
And these were concepts he got from the Bible.
那他从圣经得到这个概念。
But this particular book also influenced American democracy.
那这本书也影响了美国的独立，
And
美国的民主。
About 40 years later, the king tried to crack down on the Scottish people because of their thinking.
那在大概14年之后，苏格兰的国王开始想要镇压苏格兰的百姓，因为他们的一些思想。
And he didn't just want to say that he's authority over everything in the civil society. He also wanted them to say he's the authority over everybody in the church.
因为那时候苏格兰的国王，他想要的不只是在国家的层面掌权，他也想要介入教会，也想要掌管教会。
But let me show you the impact of the Reformation on the local people.
那接下来我要讲的是宗教改革的影响如何影响一般普罗大众。
This was 40 years later after Samuel Rutherford's book.
那在 Samuel Rutherford 写出这本书之后的14年。
This is a painting of a famous story that happened that time.
这个图是在讲当时非常有名的一个故事。
There was a farmer's daughter.
她是农夫的女儿。
And the king said, "You have to swear that the king is in charge of the church."
那时候 那个国王就跟他说，你必须要发誓说你同意，国王是教会的领袖。
And this farmer's daughter was unwilling to swear that.
那当时的这个农夫的女儿，她不愿意发出这样的宣誓。
Just think about that. Every single local person was educated and had their own thinking, so they can't be controlled by the government.
就你可以想象一个情况是，当时所有的老百姓他们都受到教育，所以他们不可能被国王掌控思想。
And she knew the Bible very well, and she loved God, and so she refused to do it.
她很熟圣经，她也爱上帝，所以她拒绝国王的要求。
So she was tied to a stake near the ocean, and when the water came in, she was caused to drown.
所以她就被绑在石头上，在靠近海边的地方，所以当海浪变高的时候，她就被淹死了。
And to the very last, she refused to state the king. She prayed for the king, but she refused to say he's a head of the church.
在她人生的最后一刻，她为这个国王祷告，但她仍然拒绝承认国王是教会的领袖。
So this happened at every level, and not just some educated people, but every level in the Scottish society.
所以这样子为真理受逼迫的情况，不只是在那些受教育的人身上发生，而是在苏格兰的每一个层面都如此的发生。
And even farmers' daughters were willing to stand up against the king.
即使是一个农夫的女儿，也愿意如此勇敢的反对君王错误的想法。
Eventually, all these Scottish were persecuted because of their religious beliefs, and they fled to America.
所以当时就有许多的苏格兰人，他们就因为这信仰缘故被逼迫，那最后他们就逃到美洲。
Two of my ancestors fought in the American Revolution.
我有2个祖先曾经在美国独立战争中打过仗。
And both of them were Scottish immigrants.
他们2个都是苏格兰的移民到美洲。
And the king in England at the time basically called the American Revolution a Presbyterian revolution.
当时英国的国王他们称呼美国的革命叫做
Presbyterian
叫做
revolution.
长老会革命。
So that war for independence was largely supported by the Presbyterians in America. The war for independence was supported by the Presbyterians.
当时的独立战争的支持者主要是谁呢？就是长老教会的信徒。
Yes. Because again, the idea that from that book that if the king abuses his power, the people have a right to throw him off.
就是因为这样的概念，就刚刚讲的那本书提到概念，如果君王他恶待百姓，那么百姓有权利来反叛这个君王，所以他们就发起战争。
You guys know what this is, right?
你知道这是什么吗？
The Declaration of Independence.
美国独立宣言。
Taiwan doesn't have one yet, right?
台湾还没有对吧？
It said that everybody is equal under God, and so a king cannot say he's better than another person.
所以这独立宣言里头提到，在上帝面前人人平等，所以任何的君王都不能够说他比任何人还要更优越。
And all the details in this document reflect what that book Samuel Rutherford wrote was saying.
所以这个独立宣言里头的细节就反映出那个 Rutherford 那本书里头所写的内容。
And the biggest motivation was because of the king trying to control the church. And the Christians said, no, this is what we have to serve the God and not the king.
所以当时的国王试图想要掌控教会，但是教会的基督徒就勇敢的起来反抗。他们说，只有上帝是教会的最高领袖，而不是国王。
They submitted to the civil government on certain things, but related to the church, they would not submit to the civil government.
当然，这些基督徒在许多方面，他们都愿意顺服国家的领袖，愿意顺服国王，但是在教会相关的事务上，他们没有办法顺服国王。
So you see, the kings in Europe really liked the Roman Catholic Church because they had a structure of government just like the king. You know, they had a pope.
因为当时的欧洲那些国家的国王都蛮喜欢罗马天主教的，因为罗马天主教制度就是很像皇帝跟老百姓一样这样的专制。
But as you see, the U.S. Constitution was based on the Presbyterian form of government.
但是你看到美国的独立是根基于长老们一起治理教会这样子长老会的体制。
And that developed from the study of the Bible.
而这一切都是从圣经所发展而来的。
And this is why Taiwan and Japan and Korea today have representative republics instead of dictatorships or kingdoms.
那这也是为什么今天的台湾、日本还有韩国有民主制度，而不是君主独裁的制
All
度。
right, let me tell you a few more things that were influenced by the Reformation.
那我再讲一些就是被宗教改革所影响的事情。
Do you know what this is?
你知道这是谁吗？
Slaves, right?
这是奴隶。
It was Reformed Christians in England that spent over 30 years of a social movement to try to abolish the slave trade.
那时候在英国有许多受宗教改革影响的基督徒，他们花了将近30年时间，努力的在社会改革，而最后废除了奴隶的制度。
They took the Bible, they said, everybody was created by God, so we should be equal. We can't treat some people as slaves.
他们拿起圣经说，每一个人在上帝面前都是平等的，所以没有任何人应该像奴隶一样被对待。
And the very first book in the Bible, in Genesis, the very first chapter, it said every person was made in God's image, so we all have value.
所以圣经里头的第一卷书就是创世纪里头有一句话说到，人是按着神的形象造的，所以每一个人都是有生来就有价值。
So it's wrong to capture slaves and treat them as non-valuable.
所以把一个人抓起来当作奴隶是不对的，不应该把他当作没有价值的生物这样对待。
There's a book about what happened in that social movement that my daughter likes, and hopefully one day I'll get her to give a lecture on what happened in that social movement.
那我女儿她最近在读一本书关于社会运动的，希望她有一天能够整理好，然后跟你报。
It's about the slave trade, abolishing the slave trade.
跟废除黑奴制度有关的书。
So because of the Reformation, democracy spread around the world.
所以因为宗教改革的缘故，民主制度就席卷了全世界。
This is an article that was published in 2012.
那这是一篇在2012年发表的文章。
It's a researcher did a research why some countries have became democracies and other countries did not become democracies.
这篇文章在讨论为什么有些国家走向民主制度，有些国家却没有走向民主制度。
And he said he did a lot of statistical analysis, but the main issue was where there were Protestant missionaries. Those countries became democracies.
他做了很多统计分析，但他的结论就是哪一个国家有受宗教改革影响的基督徒，在那个地方就会产生民主制度。
And of course, we see that in Taiwan too.
当然，我们也在台湾看见一样的现象。
So let me talk about the two countries that influenced Taiwan the most: the Netherlands and Scotland.
我要谈有两个影响台湾最多的国家，荷兰跟苏格兰。
The missionaries that came from those countries.
从这两个国家来的传教士、宣教士。
So that's the Netherlands. It's also about the same size as Taiwan.
荷兰它的国家跟台湾差不多大。
This is a ship, the type of ship that brought the Dutch to Formosa, and that's the symbol of the company, the East India Company.
当年的荷兰人就是坐这样子的船来台湾，那个船是荷属东印度公司，那个就是东印度公司的标志。
This is a picture that the Dutch drew a map of Taiwan.
那当时荷兰人画了一个台湾的地图，像这样。
You notice they didn't explore the East Coast as much, so Elon's not very clear in the picture, right?
那当时他们没有很多的去探索台湾的东部，所以宜兰在这个地图上不是很明显。
Their main base was down to the lower right, which was Tainan.
那他们
Lower right of the picture.
那当时他们的基地比较是在这个地图的右下方，就是今天的台南。
This was a picture of their colony, their settlement in Tainan.
这是他们在台南那里所建立的聚落。
And I hear that now all of that water in the back is all covered with mud and built over now.
那在后面的那边都是被烂泥巴盖住。
They sent missionaries to the Formosa, the Austronesian people, the Yuanzhimin, in Taiwan.
荷兰人他们就派了宣教士去到原住民那边来台湾。
And this gets me to another influence of the Reformation.
那这让我去介绍另外一个宗教改革的影响。
Because the Protestant missionaries wanted everybody to read the Bible in their own language.
因为宗教改革的时候，那些领袖们希望每一个人都能够用自己的语言来读圣
The
经。
missionaries would learn the local language.
所以宣教士、传教士就必须学习当地的语
And
言。
many languages never had any written writing.
那有很多的语言在当时并没有文字，
So the missionaries invented writing for the language.
所以当时的宣教士、传教士就为这些语言发明了文字。
And then they published a translation of the Bible in that language.
然后他们也出版了用那个语言的文字所写成的圣经。
And then the local people had the writing. They started writing their own material to publish in the language.
所以当时人也开始用这个语言来写作出版。
So it preserved their language, it preserved their local identity.
当他们保留了自己的语言之后，也保留了他们的身份、民族认同。
And in order to let the local people be able to read the Bible, the missionaries started schools where there were never public education before.
为了让当地的人能够有足够的知识水平来读圣经，所以宣教士就建立了学校，让他们能够受到教育。
And as those people got educated, they began to push for self-rule or democracy.
当这些人受了教育之后，他们就开始追求民族自觉，追求民主。
This happened all over the world.
在全世界都发生一样的事。
Now the Dutch translated the book of Matthew. They were only here for 40 years. They translated the book of Matthew into the local 原住民 language.
那当时荷兰的宣教士在台湾，他们只有40年的时间，他们把新约圣经的马太福音翻成原住民的语言。
In the Saraya language.
希腊语。
So I have a copy of that here and the other languages of the Bible that were translated by missionaries in Taiwan.
这边有一些圣经就是当时的宣教士把圣经翻译成其他原住民的语言。
But they also used the language for their land contracts. So you can see on the left is their own writing of their own language. On the right is the Chinese characters. So when they had a land contract.
所以他们也在土地的合约上把这个文字翻译成当地的语言。
So the local people themselves wrote their own language.
当地人他们就写自己的语言。
For a contract.
在土地的合约上写下。
The other thing the Dutch influenced Taiwan is they imported people from Fujian to start an agriculture in Taiwan.
当时的荷兰人又把福建的一些人他们运来台湾，让他们在这边种田。
So you could say that your ancestors are here because of the Dutch.
那你或许可以说，你的祖先之所以在台湾，是因为荷兰人的关系。
Now I'll talk about the Presbyterians.
那我要讲长老教会。
The Presbyterians came in the 1800s.
长老教会的基督徒在19世纪的时候来台湾。
There are three guys. George Mackay.
有3个人，第一个是马街。
He started a lot of churches in Ilan.
他在宜兰开始了很多教会。
And also introduced dentistry.
那他也引进了牙医。
Another man was William Campbell.
另外一个是甘维里。
He developed a dictionary for the Taiwanese language.
他也发明了写了这个台语的字典。
And I have a copy of that dictionary over there. You can look at later too.
我们等一下那边有那个台语字典，大家可以看。
And also James Maxwell.
马雅各。
He introduces the first printing press in Taiwan.
他引进台湾的第一笔的 machinery。
The machine.
他引进了台湾第一台印刷机。
And they started publishing a lot of things in the Taiwanese language.
所以他们就开始出版很多台语的刊物。
And then Thomas Barclay translated the Bible into Taiwanese.
巴克里他把圣经翻译成台语。
So that's, I don't know, have some of you gone down to Tainan? You can still see the original printing press.
如果你们有些去台南，你还可以看到那个最原始的印刷机。
You might not have noticed, but all of the names of those missionaries are all Scottish names.
你们可能没有发现，但是这些宣教士的名字，他们都是苏格兰语。
And this printing press came from Edinburgh, Scotland. That's where it was manufactured.
那这个印刷机是从苏格兰的爱丁堡来的，那就是在那里制造的印刷机送来台湾。
They also produced the first nursing textbook.
他们也出版了台湾第一本护理学的课本。
And it's in Taiwanese, it's not in Mandarin.
那它是台语的，不是普通话的。
Here's some of the books. There's translated from the English into Chinese about the first missionaries.
那边有一些书是英文翻译成中文，是关于来台湾的最初的几个宣教士。
Taiwan also developed its own catechism teaching about what the church believes in Taiwanese. They wrote their own.
那当时的宣教士他们也用台语写了许多教理问答，就是用一问一答的方式来教导圣经的原则。他们用台语写作这些。
So they imitated what the people in the Reformation did.
所以他们效法了当时宗教改革人所做一样的事情。
The right one is a catechism from Europe that was translated. The left one is one from Taiwan.
右边那一本是当年在英国的教理问答翻译成台语，那左边那个就是用台语的资源为自己写成的。
This is my own bookshelf.
是我的书架。
That whole row are Taiwanese language books.
那一整排都是台语的书。
Most of them were published from the Christian Church Presbyterian Press.
那大部分这些台语的书都是由台湾长老教会的公报社出版社所出版的。
You can see these Bibles. These are all the different Bible translations done in Taiwan into all the local languages of Taiwan.
那这些圣经你在那桌上，大家也可以看到，都是把圣经翻译成台湾各种不同的当地的语言。
I want to talk about one of the early Bible translators.
那我要讲一些台湾最早的几位。
Not from Taiwan, from the Reformation.
就是我要讲几位，就是最早的圣经翻译圣经的人，在宗教改革的时期。
There's a current organization around the world that does Bible translation, and they named their organization after this man.
那现在世界上有一个专门在翻译圣经到不同语言的机构，那这个机构的名字就是。
Oh, actually, no, I'm mistaken. That's White. It's another guy. I'm sorry. No,
就是不是这个人，是另外一个叫做威克里夫的人。
Yeah. William Tyndale died in 1536.
那这个人叫做丁道尔，他是什么时候？1570年。
He died because he was translating the Bible into English.
他会死是因为他把圣经翻成英文，所以他就被处死。
But his translation influenced all the other future Bible translations in English. So if you look at an English Bible, it was influenced by him.
但他所翻译的把圣经翻译成英文，他的翻译就影响了之后所有英文圣经的译本。
But he was executed by the Roman Catholic Church because of this.
但他因为翻译圣经，所以就被罗马天主教处死。
200 years later,
在他之后的200年
there was a missionary from Wales named Robert Thomas.
有一个从威尔士来的宣教士。
It's the guy on the left.
就是左边那个人。
His name is Robert Thomas.
叫 Robert Thomas.
And he died. Went into Korea trying to give out Bibles to the Koreans.
那他去韩国想要发送圣经给韩国人。
And the Koreans killed him.
那韩国人就把他杀了。
But he was willing to die so that people could read the Bible.
但他愿意为着那些人可以读到圣经而甘愿牺牲自己的生命。
Of course, Korean itself has transformed and has become a very Christian country, and now they remember him and they commemorate him.
那当然，现在韩国已经成为一个有很多基督徒的国家，所以他们总是纪念这个宣教士对他们国家带来的贡献。
These guys on the right are actually my ancestors in Korea.
右边的这些人就是我的祖先。
My grandfather, my great grandfather, and my great great grandfather.
就是他的祖父、曾祖父。
阿公、阿祖、阿太。I just tell you about my great great grandfather.
阿祖。
阿太。He came to Korea the same year that the Japanese took over Taiwan.
那他去韩国的时间跟日本人占领台湾是一样的时间。
And at that time, the Japanese were trying to take over Korea too.
那时候日本人也想要占领韩国。
So they were trying to kill the Korean king and queen.
所以那时候他们想要把韩国的国王跟皇后杀死。
He actually, I have letters where he was writing that they had to trust the missionaries to prepare their food and guard them because they were afraid of an assassination.
那时候韩国的国王他们必须要信任我的
The missionaries.
你爷爷吗？
And also my
就是要信任当时的宣教士，包括他的阿泰。对，那因为他们怕杀手，所以就要依赖他们的庇护。
And I have a letter that he wrote when he recorded. He was doing a night guard in front of the queen's bedchamber with a pistol, and he was guarding the queen. My great-great-grandfather was guarding. I have a letter that he was describing guarding the queen in front of her chamber at night with a pistol.
所以他的某个祖先，就是那时候还拿枪，然后在那个皇宫外面保护皇后。
And the missionaries would rotate, trying to protect the king and
所以
queen.
那时候的传教士会轮班保护那时候的国王皇后。
Because they couldn't trust anybody else.
因为那时候国王后没有办法信任所有其他的人。
But this is also a major impact. The missionaries often would identify with the local people, and they would try to protect the local people from foreign invaders.
所以这是为什么宣教士都能够设身处地的来同理当地的人，因为他们会保护当地的人免于外来的威胁。
The final thing I want to mention is maybe a verse that kind of summarizes what all the Protestants believed.
那或许有一节圣经的经文能够总结过去这些宗教改革的领袖基督徒们他们所相信的。
This is in Taiwanese, it's not in Mandarin.
这不是普通话，这是台语。
Can you read Taiwanese?
可以念台语吗？
因为上帝将伊独生的囝受死世间，互既若信伊的人的人伦会得到永活，伊请世间到安尼。So because of the missionaries' love for all the people in different nations of the world, they went to share this news with them.
因为这些宣教士他们爱不同国家的不同的人，所以他们愿意去到这些地方来传扬这个好消息。
So I know we talked about a lot of topics.
我知道我们讲了很多主题，
Whether it's economics
不管是经济的、
or government structure
政治体制、
or education
教育
or religion,
或者宗教，
most of what you experience today was influenced because of what happened 500 years ago.
你今天所享受经历的一些好处，都是受过去500年以前的宗教改革所影响的。
All the different civil societies and things that happened were influenced by that.
这些公民社会还有其他相关的，都是被过去500年前的宗教改革
And
影响。
many of those reformers died.
这些宗教改革的领袖大部分都死了，
They were killed by the governments of their time.
他们大部分都是殉道，因为信仰而被那时候政府所处决。
But it's because of what they read and believed in the Bible that they would not be afraid of even a king.
但是就是因为他们相信圣经所讲的，所以他们连国王都不怕。
And that just, in a sense, it changed the whole world, so that's why we celebrate it.
所以某程度他们的贡献改变了全世界，这也是为什么基督徒会庆祝宗教改革500周年。
So I'll stop there. I kept you a long time, huh?
所以我会停在这边，把你们留了好久。
感謝大家。
谢谢大家。
Notice that's not da, that's da.